I wanted to talk to you this idea about eucatastrophe and this way that God can take bad things and bring something good out of them. Did you notice in this story, by the way, I made Peggy read the long version. Did you notice in this story that this is not that dissimilar from the temptation in the garden? Think about it for a second. God had put the man and the woman in the garden, and he said, all the fruit, enjoy, live, have a great life, and but be fruitful and multiply, and all these sorts of things, but don't eat this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I've given you everything. You need to trust me. And the one thing they had to do, and they couldn't do it because they stopped trusting God's word. They stopped following the word and realizing that God knows best. Same thing here. Here's Sarai. Abram was already to receive this promise, and she knows this, that God said, Sarah will have a child. And it's from Sarah that the offspring, all these things will come about. All the way down to Jesus Christ, son of Abraham, as it were. All these promises were made, but what did she do? She chose not to believe, and she entered into sin because she said, I can't trust God. I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. And that's really what sin is. Sin is where we refuse to believe that God has our best interests in heart and He knows best, in whatever our circumstances. So she sins, she does this, and you say, well, how does a eucatastrophe come out of this? The word eucatastrophe, it was coined by a man named J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, all those sorts of books, little furry creatures, furry feet. But what eucatastrophe is, the word eu, or actually it's pronounced ev in Greek, means good catastrophe. God takes something that's a bad situation, something we've messed up in our lives, or somebody's messed up, and He works it for the good. Or maybe it's just something that happens in nature or in our lives, like COVID. God did bring some good out of COVID. God brought us closer to God. He helped us, many of us, He helped us to realize our need for Him and found new ways of doing things and everything else just by virtue of this catastrophe. Good things came out of it. And I would suggest to you in this, you see the same thing, because out of this woman, Hagar, the angel of the Lord, the messenger of the Lord, went and found her and said, you will also be a mighty nation. Just like the promise to Sarah. And you think, well, how can that be good? Because it says, God said through Abraham, all nations of the world will be blessed. And I'm not going to go too much into this, but the suggestion is that Ishmael, the Arab nations, are descended from him. And if that's the case, some of the greatest Christians, the greatest saints, were Arabs. Isaac the Syrian is a good example of that. One of the greatest mystics of the 7th century, he was in a church that worshipped in Arabic. And I would suggest to you as well that if Adam and Eve had not fallen in the garden, would Jesus have died for the sins of the world? Would we be receiving the Eucharist today, where God comes to dwell in us? What I'm suggesting is that whatever circumstance you find yourself in today, give God thanks. Don't despair, because God's plan is bigger. Regardless of any catastrophe that you're going through in your life, or you've experienced or will experience in the future, here's the promise that God has. It's for your salvation, because I will be there with you.